I'm Ava Monroe, an architect in Manhattan, and I paid for a family vacation I wasn't even invited to. My sister said, it was just for close ones, like I was some outsider. But they're about to learn what happens when the one you always underestimated starts keeping receipts, literally and emotionally. Before we begin, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. They called it just a mix-up, as if forgetting to tell me about a fully planned family vacation. One I paid for was something that could be shrugged off like a missed text. I was in the middle of drafting an elevation sketch for a new art gallery in Tribeca. My coffee had gone cold. The sun was already dipping past the midtown skyline, bathing the open floor plan of our studio in a coppery hue. Laughter bubbled from the break room, my coworkers giggling about someone's dog in a Halloween costume. I should have been laughing too. Instead, I was staring at my phone screen, my heart thudding with a numb kind of disbelief. I just sent a quick message in our family group chat. Hey, just wondering when the family trip is. Need to block the dates for PTO. It took my sister Claire exactly 6 minutes to reply. No punctuation, no emojis. We're back. The trip was just for close ones. That was it. I read the text 3 times before I understood the insult buried in its smugness. Just for close ones. Not only had they gone without telling me, they'd already returned. The photo Claire posted right after her in a ski lift, Dad in that ridiculous red fleece, Mom holding a mug of hot cocoa with a cinnamon stick, confirmed it. They'd all been in Aspen. The trip I'd transferred money for last month when Mom said the Airbnb wouldn't book without my card. Close ones. I kept my face still. No reaction. My pencil moved smoothly over the tracing paper even as my insides twisted. Don't let them see. My coworker Dean sauntered by, balancing a bag of chips and his sketch pad. You good, Ava? I forced a smile. All good, just zoning out. I wasn't good. I was imploding in silence. Because there's something about betrayal from your own blood that rewrites your insides, like it carves new silence into your bones. Still holding my phone, I tapped open my messages to Dad. Hey, I saw Claire's message. Just want to clarify, was I not included in the trip? Read. No reply. I waited. I kept checking every 5 minutes. Nothing. That man has never been quick with words, but this wasn't forgetfulness. This was chosen silence. That was when the cold clarity hit. This wasn't just about the trip. Something had shifted. Or maybe it had always been this way and I was just now letting myself see it. The next hour passed in a blur. I nodded through a project debrief, pretended to laugh at a meme, all while watching the screen, waiting for Dad to say something, anything. Even a lie would have hurt less than this gaping indifference. When I finally left the studio that night, the wind off the Hudson felt sharper than usual, as if the city itself knew I'd been sucker punched. I walked home instead of taking the train. Needed the movement, the ache in my feet to distract me. At every red light, I kept opening the chat, rereading Claire's message like some masochist craving proof of her own disposability, just for close ones. Funny how money doesn't buy you closeness, or love, or even a seat at the table you helped pay for. I got home to my little studio on the Lower East Side, slipped off my shoes, and sat on the floor. I stared at the receipt from the vacation booking I had forwarded to Mom last month. My name, my money, their memory, and not a single trace of me in it. That's when I knew this wasn't about the trip anymore. This was a pattern, and I just caught it mid-stitch. The thing about being the other daughter is no one ever calls you that out loud, but you feel it everywhere. I used to think I was imagining it, that I was just too sensitive. But sensitivity doesn't explain the way my parents looked at Claire when she walked into a room, like she'd lit up the sun just by existing. Claire was the golden child. Even her name had a kind of sparkle. She had dimples, ballet trophies, and a laugh that made adults beam at parties. She wore pink bows and recited Bible verses in church and never talked back. I, on the other hand, was so intense. I liked building things. I drew floor plans of our house for fun. I memorized city skylines instead of Disney princesses. When I brought home a first-place medal from the regional design fair at age 10, my dad gave me a polite nod and then turned to ask Claire how her piano recital had gone. She'd played 3 wrong notes and still got ice cream. That was the rhythm of our family. I learned to clap for her while clenching my teeth. One memory always sticks out. It was Claire's 13th birthday. She was having a backyard party, white balloons, lemonade stands, cupcakes that looked like roses. I'd helped Mom set up everything, even ran to the store last minute when they forgot candles. My gift to Claire was a handmade jewelry organizer I'd built in shop class. Stained the wood, personalized it with her initials. When she opened it, she smiled politely and said, "Thanks, Ava," before tossing it aside for the Tiffany bracelet Dad had bought her. Everyone oohed and awed. No one noticed when I went inside. I sat on the stairs with a plastic cup of lukewarm lemonade and just shut down. That's the day I stopped trying to impress them. But of course, that was a lie too. Even after all the birthdays I spent in the background, even after hearing, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" whispered in the kitchen, I still kept pushing. Straight as, student body president, full ride to Columbia for architecture. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I got big enough, bright enough, successful enough, they'd see me. They'd call me when they were proud. They'd miss me when I wasn't around. Spoiler, they didn't. The last time they visited me in Manhattan, I had just opened my first solo exhibit, a temporary installation in a Brooklyn gallery, my interpretation of urban grief and concrete resilience. It was the biggest night of my professional life. Mom walked in and said, "This neighborhood's gotten so gritty. Do you feel safe here?" Dad asked how much the frames cost. Claire didn't show. And afterward, when I asked if they liked the exhibit, Mom patted my shoulder and said, "Your sister's doing that influencer campaign now. She's so brave to be on camera like that." They didn't get it. They never did. Back then, I thought maybe I was the problem. Too ambitious, too different, too something. But now, after the Aspen betrayal, I'm beginning to think I was never the problem. I was just too inconvenient to worship, too inconvenient to control, and too expensive to erase until now. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come with yelling or slammed doors. It's the quiet kind, the slow kind, the kind where love wears a mask, and by the time you recognize it, your hands are already tied. That was me 5 years ago, when I still believed sacrifice was a synonym for love. It started the day Dad called. I still remember where I was, on a job site in Soho, hard hat on, steel-toed boots, sketching last-minute adjustments to a custom stairwell. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer. But his name on the screen, it was rare enough to mean something had to be wrong. "Hey, Dad, everything okay?" He cleared his throat. "Your mom's not doing well." The words dropped like stones. I left early, canceled 2 meetings, rode the LIRR back to Long Island, heart in my throat. When I got there, Mom was curled on the couch, pale, trembling. The air smelled like ginger tea and expired tension. Claire was there too, perfectly made up, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for an Uber. The diagnosis came 2 weeks later, chronic autoimmune inflammation, possibly lupus. I Googled everything, suggested specialists, sat through appointments. And when the bills came, Dad sat me down, no warning, just facts. "The mortgage is a little behind." "Just temporary," he said, as if embarrassed. "How far behind?" I asked. He flinched. 2 months, then 3, then something about a lien notice. I didn't hesitate. I was 29, freshly promoted, finally making a salary that didn't require split rent and dollar pizza. It felt good to help. Right, even. They were my parents, so I covered 3 months, then another. Eventually, I offered to automate it. "Just until things stabilize," I said. Dad nodded, grateful but quiet. I labeled the transfer in my budgeting app as temporary family relief. Set a calendar reminder to cancel it in 6 months. Spoiler, I never canceled it. The months passed. Mom's health improved slowly but surely. Claire got a new SUV, started flying out to influencer events in Palm Springs. They added a screened-in porch. But that auto payment, still draining from my account, right on schedule. No one said a word, not to thank me, not to renegotiate. Just silence. That silence, that's the betrayal. That's the part that keeps me up. I brought it up twice. Once in an email to Dad. I even attached a polite little PDF of my contributions, just in case they'd forgotten. No reply. The second time I brought it up in person. Thanksgiving. The turkey was dry, and Claire had just made a joke about how I always wore serious colors like I was attending a funeral. I said calmly, "Hey, we should probably revisit the house support." Mom blinked like I'd curse it at the table. Dad rubbed his temple. Let's not talk about money right now, Ava. It's a holiday. Claire changed the subject before I could press, so I didn't. I swallowed it, again. But after the Aspen trip, after being erased from a vacation I paid for, something inside me cracked open. And I started doing what I do best, documenting. I pulled bank records, screenshots, forwarded confirmation emails, compiled everything. Dates, amounts, even Mom's original message asking me to help just until spring. You want to know the number? $72,620. That's how much I've sent over 5 years. That's 2 Teslas, or 3 semesters at NYU. Or just imagine this, a down payment on my own property. Not that they ever said, hey, thanks again. In their minds, I think I became the utility bill. Something that just got paid. No person behind the amount. No daughter. And Claire, she's been living her dream life. Captioning photos like family is everything under a sponsored brunch plate. Meanwhile, I'm their ghost investor. Here's the part that really gets me. I thought it made me good. I genuinely believed that quietly funding their comfort, even as they ignored my boundaries, was noble. I thought they'd see it. That one day they'd say, Ava, we couldn't have made it through without you. Instead, they booked a luxury ski lodge and labeled it a gathering for close ones. I wasn't even worth a lie. Not a we thought you'd be busy, or there wasn't space. Just a casual exclusion, just a shrug. And now I'm starting to wonder if love was ever the currency. Maybe it was just convenience. For the first time in weeks, I woke up with something that felt dangerously close to hope. It had nothing to do with my family. In fact, it was because I'd finally stopped thinking about them for 5 minutes. Instead, I was thinking about Marion Chen. My boss, mentor, and the only person in my life who truly understood what it meant to build something from nothing. We were pitching a proposal to the City Museum, a new wing dedicated to sustainable design, clean lines, public accessibility, a place meant to breathe within the brutalism of Midtown. I'd spent 3 months refining the concept, nights and weekends buried in blueprints, materials research, and render models. Yesterday, we'd presented. This morning, she called me into her office. Ava, she said, smiling over the rim of her espresso, they loved it. I blinked. They want the design. They want you, she said, lead architect from draft to ribbon cutting. I couldn't speak. She grinned, tapping her mug against mine like it was champagne. Barcelona's next. We're taking the same concept international. I want you on that too. Just like that, the fog lifted. Recognition, not out of obligation or guilt, but earned. I walked back to my desk in a daze, clutching the project packet like it was a golden ticket. For a moment, I just sat there, watching the city move outside the window. Yellow cabs, steam from subway grates, people living their lives, and I let myself feel it. Pride. Not the polite version I'd been trained to minimize, but full electric pride. I had done this, me, and because some habits die hard, I thought, maybe this is the moment to try again. Maybe, just maybe, they'll finally be proud. So I opened the family group chat. Typed. Just found out the museum chose my proposal. I'll be lead architect on the Midtown redesign, also got tapped for the Barcelona project. Huge news. Hope everyone's doing okay, smiling face with smiling eyes. I hit send. Waited. 30 seconds passed. Then Claire reacted with a string of emojis, party clapping nail, nothing from mom, nothing from dad, no proud of you. No, wow, Ava. Just Claire, probably half reading while getting a manicure. I refreshed the chat, checked for read receipts. Watched the 3 dots flash, then disappear. That was it. A museum commission, international design recognition. And all I got was a sarcastic emoji string and silence. That silence, again, was louder than any insult. I sat there, phone heavy in my hand, and felt the shame creep in. Not because I wasn't enough, but because I had hoped, again, they would act like I was. I deleted the message. Not from the chat, just from my mind. Marion knocked on my cubicle wall, breaking my spiral. Still with me? I nodded, smiled. Yes, absolutely. We had layouts to finalize and material vendors to loop in. I had no time to waste on people who couldn't text back proud of you. Still, that night I walked home a little slower. The city sparkled, the wind was soft, and I let myself ask the question I'd buried for years. Why did their approval matter more than my own pride? The answer came quietly. It didn't. Not anymore. There's a kind of violation that doesn't bruise the skin. It doesn't scream. It signs paperwork. I always thought if there was ever going to be a breaking point between my father and me, it would be loud. A door slammed. Voices raised, but no, it came quietly in the form of a spreadsheet. "Do you usually report family gifts on your tax forms?" Joel asked, tapping a line on his screen. I frowned, confused. We were midway through our quarterly financial check-in. I'd been zoning out, half distracted by a new client contract, thinking I'd be in and out in 20 minutes. "What do you mean, gifts?" I asked. Joel turned his monitor slightly toward me and pointed to a scanned IRS Form 709, filed under Walter Monroe, my father. Donor, Walter Monroe recipient, Ava Monroe gift amount, $6,000. I stared at it. Joel glanced at me over his glasses. "You aware of this?" I shook my head slowly. "I never received a gift." "That's my money. I've been helping cover their mortgage for years." Joel's brow furrowed. "Right, I remember that. You mentioned setting up automatic transfers when your mom got sick." He clicked back through past returns. "It's not just this year. He's been doing this for a while, 3 consecutive filings." There they were. 2020, $3,500. $2021, $4,200. $2022, $6,000. Each one claimed under the pretense that he had given me those amounts as untaxed gifts. "I don't understand," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "Claiming a financial gift like this reduces taxable estate value," Joel explained. "It's a common tactic, sometimes legal, sometimes questionable." "But they weren't gifts," I whispered. "They were payments. I was helping, I am helping." "That's the issue," he said gently. "If he's calling it a gift, it makes it look like you're the one benefiting. So he's using my money to make it look like he was helping me." Joel nodded slowly. "It's deceptive, not criminal yet, but ethically it's a problem." And just like that, it all clicked. The unreturned emails, the vague deflections, the reason no one ever wanted to talk about money at the table. They weren't just forgetting to be grateful. They were rewriting the story entirely. I walked home from Joel's office in a daze, gripping the printed copies like they might combust in my hands. I replayed every moment I'd handed over money, every conversation where I'd offered help, every time they said, "We appreciate it," and made it sound like a temporary favor instead of a permanent solution. They let me believe I was supporting them, all while turning the narrative around to make me look like the one who needed support. And Claire. She was out there taking selfies with cheese boards, captioning everything with "family is everything." I couldn't breathe, not from grief, not even from betrayal, but from the growing awareness that I had been willingly complicit. I'd never asked questions, never demanded receipts. I'd trusted them to be honest, not just with money, but with me. And they weren't. They weren't even close. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and pulled out a fresh notepad. The same kind I used for blueprints, gridded, clean, logical. This time, it wasn't for a building. It was for the timeline of a lie. I wrote down every date, every payment, every text that referenced my support. Every time I'd emailed Dad about revisiting the terms and heard nothing back. And beside each one, I wrote what they did instead. Filed it as a gift. Ignored the email. Bought ski gear. Posted photos from Aspen. There it was, in black ink and blue ink and highlighter. Not just hurt. Not just exclusion, but evidence. It's strange how calm your mind becomes when you decide to stop asking for fairness. That was the shift. Not rage, not revenge, just clarity. And clarity can be terrifying because it takes away all your excuses. That weekend, I stayed in. Didn't answer calls. Let texts go unread. My apartment was silent except for the hum of my old radiator and the occasional siren outside. I turned my dining room table into a war room. One end, printouts from the bank, every automatic transfer I'd sent to my parents' account since the first temporary payment 5 years ago. Middle, screenshots of messages, Mom thanking me for saving their home, Dad assuring me, "We'll square up once we're on our feet." Other end, a folder labeled Claire, filled with Venmo screenshots, birthday trip photos, and her recent post about working hard to build your dream life, taken in front of the Aspen Lodge. None of it hurt anymore. It just confirmed what I already knew. I had been a silent investor in a family that no longer acknowledged my shares. I color-coded the evidence. Red for ignored emails, orange for passive-aggressive replies, Yellow for implied manipulation, things like don't make this about money and you know how hard it's been for your mother. Green for proof of payments. Blue for moments when I tried to pull back and they pulled harder. It looked like a tapestry, one stitched with guilt, loyalty, and gaslighting. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just documented. And when the timeline was complete, when I'd labeled and indexed every transfer, every message, every instance of twisted truth, I sat back and realized something chilling. If I weren't me, if I were reading this as an outsider, I'd say this woman was being exploited. And I had been. Just because there were no contracts didn't mean there weren't terms. And I had broken the first one. Don't ask for recognition. That was always Claire's role, to be celebrated. Mine was to contribute. Quietly, that Monday I brought everything to therapy. Dr. Reese always measured, scanned the timeline without blinking. Then she asked, "What do you want from them?" The question stunned me. For years I would have answered without thinking, love, appreciation, some recognition that I mattered. Now I didn't know anymore. "An exit," I said finally. "A clean one." She nodded. We spent the session talking not about confrontation, but separation. How to remove myself from the system without needing them to understand. "You're not leaving the table in protest," Dr. Reese said gently. "You're just realizing they've been eating off your plate." That night, for the first time in years, I sat down at my desk not to help them, but to protect me. I drafted a letter, formal, precise, neutral in tone, but firm in structure. To whom it may concern, effective next month, I will no longer be contributing financially to the Monroe household. Attached is a record of all payments made since 2018, totaling $72,620. As of this notice, no further transfers will be made, and I respectfully request no further financial correspondence unless mediated through legal counsel. Sincerely, Ava Monroe. No emotion, no nostalgia, just clarity in Arial font. I CC'd our family's attorney, someone I hadn't spoken to since the estate planning after Grandma died. I didn't send it yet. I just let it sit there, unsent, glowing on the screen like a loaded weapon I'd built myself. And then something unexpected happened. I slept, deep, uninterrupted sleep, the kind you don't realize you've been missing until it finally returns. The next day I woke up and made French press coffee, opened the curtains, cleaned the apartment. And I didn't check my phone once, because something had shifted. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like their daughter. I felt like myself, whole, independent, and nearly free. Sometimes you need someone who remembers who you were before the wounds. That's why I called Eliza. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe a year. She lived upstate now, worked in environmental law, and had a laugh that made you believe not everything in life had to be heavy. We met at a coffee shop in Flatiron, where we used to sneak lattes as teenagers when we wanted to feel like adults. She beat me there, already tucked into a window seat with a scarf tied around her neck the way only Eliza could pull off, like an artist and a prosecutor rolled into one. The second I sat down, she looked at me, really looked, and said, "You're carrying something." I laughed hollow, more like dragging it. So I told her everything, the trip, the payments, the gifts, the letter. She listened without interrupting, only nodded. And when I was done, she stirred her tea and said, "You know they're not going to understand it, right? Not the way you need them to." I blinked. Yeah, I know. Then why are you still waiting for their reaction to validate your truth?" The question wasn't an attack. It was an offering. I stared out the window for a moment. A kid was trying to zip up his coat while his dad watched, arms crossed. The boy struggled, fumbled, then finally got it. And the dad didn't say, "Good job," just turned and walked ahead. That was my childhood in a single vignette. Eliza reached into her bag and handed me something, a small notepad covered in stickers and worn at the edges. "Write it down," she said. "What leaving means, not just the letter, the why." So I did. Between sips of coffee, with her watching like a lighthouse in a storm, I wrote, "Leaving means no more waiting for a birthday call that never comes. No more holding my breath after I share good news. No more being the family wallet disguised as a daughter. No more explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. Leaving means freedom. Not because I hate them, but because I finally love me." I didn't cry. I felt warm, like some truth had settled in my bones. And then I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and hovered over the draft. "Eliza," I said. She looked up. "If I send this, there's no going back." "Sweetheart," she said gently, "you left a long time ago. This is just you catching up." So I pressed send. The email whooshed off into cyberspace, just like that. No fireworks, no sirens, just silence. The quiet kind that feels like relief. We finished our drinks, walked in the cold for a while, and hugged goodbye like we had 10 years of healing in a single afternoon. When I got home, I lit a candle, turned off my phone, and cooked myself dinner from scratch, something I hadn't done in weeks. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. That night I slept again, deeply, no racing thoughts, no invisible hand clutching my chest, no ghosts at the foot of my bed whispering that I owed someone something, because I didn't, not anymore. It came on a Sunday morning. The kind where the light spills in soft and golden, the city still quiet as if holding its breath. I'd just finished reading, still wrapped in my robe, when my phone buzzed on the counter. I expected a sale alert or maybe a "hey, brunch" text from a coworker. But instead it was him, Dad, "rent's overdue," 2 words, no hello, no "hope you're well," no acknowledgement of the letter I had sent 6 days earlier. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply field. I could have ignored it. I could have turned my phone over and walked away. But something in me, it didn't want to be silent anymore. So I typed, "Didn't I tell you? I sent a formal notice last week. Financial support is ending. Please refer to the email." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then he replied, "You're really doing this now, after everything, while your mother's still recovering." The old guilt crawled up my spine like a reflex. I closed my eyes, breathed, typed, "This isn't about Mom, it's about boundaries. I've supported the household for 5 years. Quietly, generously. That season is over." Another pause. Then came the knife. "Wow, you've always been dramatic." I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the words. My coffee had gone cold. My robe suddenly felt too tight. He wasn't just ignoring the letter, he was erasing it. Rewriting the story again, just like he'd done with the tax forms, just like he'd done with the trip. Pretending I was the villain for simply stepping away. I called him. I shouldn't have, but I did. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Well, look who decided to call," he said, voice flat. "Did you even read the letter?" I asked. He scoffed. "I skimmed it." "Skimmed it," I repeated. "So you missed the part where I outlined 5 years of financial support, the part where I gave you notice like a professional." "It was just money, Ava." I froze. "Just money. You make good money, and we're your parents, that's how families work." "No," I said, voice low. "That's how you work, that's how you taught us to work. Claire performs, you clap, I pay, you ignore. And now that I've stopped, suddenly I'm ungrateful." "You always twist things," he muttered. "No wonder no one wants to deal with you." I felt the old wound flare. The one that told me I was too much, too intense, too Ava, but I didn't flinch. "Dad," I said, calm now. "This is your notice, not just financial, emotional. I'm done letting you pretend this is normal." He said nothing, just breathed on the other end like a stranger. And then, quietly, he asked, "Does your mother know?" I blinked. "Of course she knows. She was copied on the email." Another beat. Then he said, "You know this will make things harder for her." I felt the manipulation for what it was, one final attempt to twist love into leverage. "I'm not making anything harder," I said. "I'm just no longer making it easier." Then I hung up. I stood in my living room for a long time after that. No music, no movement, just the sound of silence, mine this time, my choice. There are places you leave, but that never stop haunting you. My parents' house in Garden City was one of them. I hadn't stepped foot on that porch in nearly a year. Not since Mom's flare-up the previous spring. Not since I'd brought groceries and prescriptions and been told, "You didn't have to." Back then, I believed they meant it. Now I know better. I didn't drive. I took the train from Penn Station, headphones in, eyes on the window. Every stop felt like rewinding a movie I didn't want to finish watching. By the time I reached the front steps, I was already bracing for battle. The house looked the same. White shutters, navy door, the hydrangeas Mom always swore she'd replace but never did. For a moment, I stood there with my hand on the brass knocker, trying to decide whether to knock or just walk in. I never got the chance. The door opened before I could move. And there she was, Claire. Hair perfect, lips glossed, wearing athleisure like she was headed to a Pilates class, not a family reckoning. "Well," she said, one eyebrow arched, This is unexpected. I texted, I replied. No one reads your novels, Ava. I stepped forward. Is Dad home? She didn't move. Why? Because we need to talk face to face, no texts, no ignoring. She folded her arms across her chest. Is this about the money? God, you're still on that. I stared at her. You do realize it wasn't just money, right? I paid part of this mortgage. I funded your Aspen trip. She rolled her eyes. You always make it about yourself. No, I said sharply. I made it about you for 5 years. I sacrificed, I stayed silent, and you all pretended I didn't exist unless you needed something. Claire's smile was razor-thin. You've always been dramatic. My heart beat faster. There it was again, the family's favorite defense. Call Ava dramatic and no one has to deal with her truth. I'm not here to fight, I said, keeping my voice level. I just want a conversation. Claire didn't move. You're not welcome inside. That hit harder than I thought it would. But before I could respond, I heard the shuffle of slippers behind her. And then Mom, wearing the same sweater I bought her 2 Christmases ago, holding a tray with 2 mugs of tea like nothing was wrong. Like we were frozen in 1999 and I had just come home from a high school debate tournament. Oh, Ava, she said, smiling too brightly. You should have told us you were stopping by. I would have made coffee cake. I blinked. Did she not know, or was she pretending? Mom, I emailed about ending the support, about what's been happening. She tilted her head. Let's not get into all that now. I'm not staying long, I just wanted. She set the tray down on a nearby table. Have some tea, Claire, let her in. I said she's not welcome, Claire snapped. Mom looked between us, unsure. The tension was suffocating. I'm not here to break anything, I said quietly. I just want the truth acknowledged. Claire laughed, sharp and cold. Ava, this isn't a courtroom. No, I said, stepping back onto the porch. But it is real life, and I'm done living in a version where I get edited out. I looked at Mom one last time. She was stirring her tea, slowly, like none of this was happening, like her daughters weren't standing at war in the doorway she raised them in. That hurt more than anything Claire had said, because now I understood. It wasn't that she didn't see. She simply refused to. The cleanest break isn't made with words, it's made with paper. Contracts, closures, password changes. I used to think freedom would come with a loud confrontation, a final monologue, a slammed door, but it didn't. It came in PDFs. After that confrontation on the porch, I didn't call, didn't text, didn't wait. I met with Lillian, my attorney, in her sleek, glass-walled office downtown. She was the kind of woman who wore tailored blazers without looking stiff and could make silence feel like strategy. She greeted me with a stack of folders. Ready to close the loop? She asked. More than ready, I said. We started with the obvious, removing my name from all shared financial obligations. The temporary mortgage account, the joint payment authorizations, the utility auto-pays that were quietly running through a debit card I hadn't used in years. It was mechanical, clinical, but something in me was trembling, not from fear, from relief. Then Lillian paused. Her eyes skimmed one form a second time. She murmured, this is odd. What is? This account, she said, tapping the paper. It still shows an active secondary user, not your father. I leaned in. Claire. Her name sat there, smug in Arial font, next to mine under authorized user. That's impossible, I said. She was never supposed to have access. That was just for me and Dad. Lillian pulled up a screen. Well, not only is she listed, she's been using it. She printed a transaction history. My stomach tightened with each line. $742.30, Lux Threads, Upper East Side, $218.50, Globar NYC, $1,087.95. See Stone Hotel, Montauk, my name, my account, her lifestyle, and none of it with my permission. Would you like to revoke access? Lillian asked evenly. Yes, I said, voice steady, and I want it closed today. The paperwork took 30 more minutes, signature after signature, notarized statements, final notices, but with every initial I scrawled, I felt the invisible threads pulling at me begin to unravel. When we were done, Lillian slid a final envelope across the table. Congratulations, she said. You're no longer financially tied to them. I stared at it, not because I was surprised, but because for the first time in 5 years, I felt solvent, and not just in money, in mind. Back at home, I opened my laptop and began the final sweep. I deleted every shared document folder, removed my Apple ID from the family plan, changed the security questions they always knew the answers to, my first pet, my favorite vacation spot, my mother's maiden name. Gone. I checked my calendar and deleted Claire's birthday reminder. Not out of spite, but because I'd finally accepted I didn't need to perform devotion that was never mutual. And somewhere in between those keystrokes, I realized something. They'd always believed I'd keep paying. Not because they were owed, but because they'd trained me to feel guilty if I didn't. They'd built a whole emotional system around that guilt. Favors repackaged as expectations, love braided with leverage. But guilt only works when you still want their approval. And I didn't. Not anymore. I made dinner that night, pasta, wine, jazz humming low in the background. And for the first time, I didn't check my phone every few minutes expecting backlash. Because I knew what was coming. Radio silence until they needed something. But this time, there would be no opening. Not in my bank, not in my inbox, not in me. Victory tastes strange when you're bracing for impact. The opening gala for the Marlin Design Museum was held on a crisp Thursday evening, the kind where New York sparkled just a little brighter, the air cool enough to keep people moving, warm enough to make them linger outside. And tonight they lingered. Design critics, curators, international press, all gathered under glass ceilings and minimalist arches I had dreamed into being. My arches. My name, printed in serif font on plaques beside each installation. Lead architect, Ava Monroe. It should have felt like triumph, and it did at first. People smiled. Champagne flowed. My team huddled around a corner table, buzzing with pride. Marion, my mentor and boss, kissed my cheek and whispered, "You did it." I smiled, I laughed, but I kept scanning the crowd like a storm was coming, and I was right. Because midway through the gallery tour, just as a photographer snapped my picture next to the copper sculpture inspired by tidal erosion, a piece I'd poured 18 months of my soul into, I saw them. My father, my mother, and Claire, standing like they belonged, dressed to blend in, eyes darting like tourists who stumbled into a place too polished for them. They weren't on the guest list. I never invited them. Marion noticed my face freeze. "Everything okay?" I nodded automatically. Just a surprise guest. I walked away before I could explain. They spotted me halfway across the floor. My father raised his hand slightly, not a wave, more like a silent summons. Claire smiled, all teeth, like we were at a brunch and not the culmination of my entire professional life. I didn't go to them. Not yet. Instead, I walked the rest of the gallery, collected breath, nodded at patrons, accepted congratulations like armor, until I turned a corner and found him waiting. My father. No pretense, no smile, just standing there, hands in his coat pockets like a man about to deliver a lecture. "Ava," he said, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms. "We talked already." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You emailed, that's not the same." He paused. "You blindsided us after all we've done for you." The phrase hit me like a slap. "All you've done for me," I repeated. "You mean the mortgage I paid, the taxes you deducted behind my back." The silence every time I begged for acknowledgement. "We raised you," he said sharply. "We gave you everything, and now you're here, this event, this career, because we sacrificed." I took a step back, not physically, emotionally. The words were scripted, mechanical, the myth he told himself. "You didn't raise me," I said, voice low. "You tolerated me until I became useful." He flinched, but I wasn't done. "You didn't show up for graduations. You didn't visit my studio. You left me out of a family trip I paid for." He said nothing, just stood there, jaw tight. And then he reached into his coat, pulled out a manila envelope cheap like from a pharmacy, and handed it to me. "I want it back." My chest tightened. "What?" "The money," he said. "Everything you said you gave, you want to be done, fine, but be done properly. Pay us back for what we gave you, food, school, support, all of it." I stared at the envelope like it might catch fire. "I'm not giving you anything," I whispered, but I reached into my bag and pulled out my own envelope. Heavy, crisp, prepared, I held it out. He hesitated. "What's this?" "Final statement," I said. "Account cleared, legally notarized." He took it, flipped through the pages, no reaction, just silence. Behind him, Claire and Mom watched from the corner, frozen like mannequins who didn't realize the window was two-way glass. I leaned in. "This is over." He said nothing. I turned and walked away, each step slower than the last, refusing to look back. The next time I smiled that night, it was real. Because finally, they were just people in a room I didn't invite. And I was the one with my name on the wall. They always thought the truth would stay buried. That no one would care. That no one would believe me. Because I didn't wear bruises, didn't scream, didn't cut them off with fireworks and fury. But truth doesn't always come out as a roar. Sometimes it leaks, calm, calculated, and irreversible. A week after the museum gala, the story broke. It wasn't a front-page scandal or a viral takedown. Not yet. It started quietly, on an ethics blog run by an investigative journalist I had trusted with my anonymous affidavit. A woman who specialized in economic coercion in invisible power structures, especially within families, especially in industries like architecture and art, where reputation is currency. The headline read, "When the family bank comes with conditions, a case study on silent financial abuse in affluent homes." No names, no direct identifiers, but enough detail that anyone who knew. A lead female architect in Manhattan. An award-winning museum project recently unveiled. 5 years of financial support to family members who had never acknowledged it publicly and used that silence to deepen control. It was structured like a profile, but it read like a quiet storm. The journalist had laid it out clinically, line by line, invoice by invoice. Not a revenge piece, a reveal, the kind that doesn't scream, it breathes. By lunchtime, it had made its way to Reddit, then to industry Slacks. Then to Twitter, not viral but loud, the kind of story that people forwarded to friends with the subject line, "This is wild, but also, have you ever?" I didn't post it. Didn't like or retweet or even text anyone back. I just watched. And the internet watched with me. My inbox filled with subject lines like, "Are you okay? If this is about you, just know I see you. This sounds familiar, thank you." The direct messages started to pour in, too, from young women in design school, from former coworkers, from people I hadn't spoken to since college. Even a cousin I hadn't seen since Claire's graduation messaged, "Was that you? If so, I always wondered. Grandma used to talk about how hard you worked. We saw it, even when they didn't." That one made me pause, because I remembered that cousin. We'd built Lego towers at Thanksgiving, and I thought he forgot me entirely. But he hadn't. And suddenly all those years I thought no one noticed were wrong. People had noticed. They just hadn't said anything until now. By Thursday, my father's suburb was buzzing. Aunt Linda called twice. I didn't pick up. Claire's Instagram, once filled with luxury bags and yoga retreats, vanished. Gone. Deleted. No statements, just digital erasure. I heard through someone at church that my mother told a neighbor the article was about someone else. But people weren't buying it, because the truth was finally out. Not in a courtroom, not in a family text thread, but in the open, framed with dignity, echoed by hundreds. I hadn't named them, but their silence named them just fine. And then a final message. It came from my father's email, one sentence. "We didn't think it would go this far." No apology, no ownership. Just the whimper of a man losing control. I didn't respond, because it hadn't gone far. They had. They'd gone too far every time they ignored my voice, every time they spent my money and praised Claire's smile, every time they taught me love came in the form of sacrifice, but only one way. Now, that cycle was over. The next morning, I boarded a flight to Barcelona. My new project, my new start. I watched the skyline fade from the plane window, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of airline tea. And as the wheels lifted off, I smiled. Because finally the story was mine. And I had told it on my terms. Peace didn't look like I expected. No applause, no parades, no dramatic final scene, just a lake. Still, cold, honest. 3 years after Barcelona, I bought a cabin 2 hours north of Albany, hidden behind evergreens and sloped trails with no cell service unless you climbed a hill and whispered to the sky. It had a wood stove, a screened porch, a desk that faced the water, and silence, real silence. Not the kind I used to endure at family dinners, where unspoken rules hung thicker than smoke. This silence was clean, chosen, mended. I didn't plan to stay there forever, But I needed a season of nothing. No deadlines, no expectations. No reminders that I had once financed the lives of people who didn't believe I mattered unless I was useful. The museum project in Barcelona had gone beautifully. I'd been asked to consult in Berlin, then Copenhagen, then back to New York. But after 2 years of jet lag and handshakes, I wanted something that didn't ask for performance. So I disappeared, not dramatically, just gradually. I stopped attending industry events. Let group chats go quiet, skipped Christmas, New Year's, even Easter. The first year, no one noticed. The second year, they noticed, but didn't ask why. By the third year, I got a postcard from my cousin Matthew. A single sentence scribbled beneath a Polaroid of him hiking the Pacific Northwest. I always wondered what happened to you. Now I think you're living the dream. He didn't ask me to write back, so I didn't. But I kept the card, pinned it above my desk between a photo of the Barcelona team and a note I'd written to myself on the day I sent the letter. You don't need their recognition to be real. Sometimes I read that line aloud, just to remember how far I'd come. I still got news from the outside world. Occasionally, a friend forwarded an update. Claire had started a coaching business for female empowerment. No mention of Aspen or the joint account or her role in everything I had to undo. My parents, still in Garden City, still pretending. Last I heard, they were telling neighbors I was working overseas and busy with architecture stuff. Not wrong, just incomplete. Sometimes people ask, don't you miss them? And here's the truth. I miss what I wished we were, not what we were. I miss the idea of a mother who noticed when I was tired, a father who remembered my college thesis title, a sister who didn't smile when I was left out. But missing the idea of someone isn't the same as needing their presence. Not anymore. Here in the cabin, I made peace with that. I chopped wood. I made my own coffee. I designed things just for me. Little things, a new bookshelf, a stone pathway from porch to lake. One night, after months of not writing anything, I opened a blank document and typed the title. Inheritance, a story of ownership. It wasn't a memoir. It wasn't a revenge piece. It was a blueprint for women like me, raised to believe love must be earned through sacrifice, to show them how to build exits, how to draw up emotional contracts, how to name the invisible work we carry when families pretend to forget. The first draft poured out over 2 weeks. By spring, I had an agent. By fall, a publisher. The book reached shelves the following year, quietly, gracefully, and when it did, I didn't send a copy to my parents, didn't mail one to Claire, but I received a letter from a young woman in Detroit, typed, folded, tear-stained. I thought I was crazy. Then I read your story. Now I know I'm not. Thank you for showing me the exit. That was enough, more than enough, because closure isn't about watching them suffer. It's about watching yourself breathe again and realizing no one's holding your ribcage shut.